thematic day to talk about nature and land use and the oceans. So with our panelists today, we're going to take a little time not to think about the human impact on humanity, but the human impact on everything on this planet that is not us, and how nuclear energy can in fact help with this. So I'm going to introduce our panelists one by one. And now we're going to move on to Julia Galosz from Poland, who is a board member for the pro-nuclear group VOTA for Climate. Julia, thank you for joining us, and can you share how nuclear energy can help with the preservation of nature?
So I think the first thing that we need to consider in terms of helping nature is obviously not touching it, but also in terms of long-term investments, we need to decarbonize as quickly as possible in terms of climate change. So we can carbon stock in the forests or wetlands, and this is the natural way of leaving this basically coal in the planet, and it's untouched. When we are building solar farms or wind farms, we are usually destroying this natural bank of carbon. If it's built in the place like forest, we need to cut it down and eventually do something with the wood. So I think that's the best way to protect the nature is as you said, actually don't know what to tell more, because that's the best way to protect the nature, to just leave it alone. And the scientists, they say that we should leave almost half of our planet untouched. And if we want to decarbonize with only renewables, if we would like to do that, it would be impossible to leave the half of our planet untouched. We also have humanity, we also have agriculture, and we can't afford to cover almost whole surface of our planet with renewables. So that's why we also have to invest in nuclear.
Technology is neutral. Uranium is neutral. But certain things in our culture get coded as left wing, right wing, in, out. I'm afraid that somehow even nuclear uses very little land and actually allows nature to be wild. Somehow it has been coded as industrial, and it has been coded as anti-nature and hyper-human development. So I'm just wondering what we can do to shift that. And in fact, so many of the mainstream environmental organizations, chief of which, that's most famous, let's say, is Greenpeace, are still anti-nuclear. How can we reach out to them and change that fact?
I think there's a different problem with that, because, as humans, of course, we make mistakes, and it's important to say, okay, I was wrong, and everything is fine with that. And, during our life, we make so many mistakes, almost every day sometimes. It's normal. But it's really hard to say, I was wrong, especially after such a long time, till 70s, if I'm not wrong, Greenpeace was advocating against nuclear. So right now it's really difficult.
Still now, aren't they, against nuclear?
Yes. I think it's really difficult for them to say, okay, almost 50 years of our career, we were wrong. And I don't know why, because, if they would change their mind, they can still change the whole narrative about the nuclear from their perspective. And they have access to a huge number of activists and advocates for environment. So they could possibly have huge impact for the case. But unfortunately for now, they are not changing their mind. Fortunately, they are not, for example, in Poland, advocating as much against nuclear, so maybe something is changing. We will see. I will keep my fingers crossed for that, but it's really easy, for the average citizen to associate knowledge and technology with something destroying the nature, and something after the movies and the robots taking over the world and everything. We have something like that in our mind. If we would think about an average citizen of the world, they prefer to think that we can charge everything from the wind and from the sun and from the water. It's so natural. It's so beautiful, romantic, way of producing energy. But we have to also create this emotional story, because most of the people are working with emotions, not with numbers. So we have to storytell, we have to make this narrative, change this narrative, because, you know, we have the numbers, we just have to build the story around it.
I really have a lot of empathy for ordinary people because I didn't used to be in energy. I haven't been in energy all my life. I was a reporter, and before I reported on energy, to me it was very abstract. And of course, you know, it's like you just think, okay, solar panels are good, wind turbines are good, and they are good, but when compared to the power of nuclear, most people just, I think they still don't get it. And that is something that we really have to change. I also want to talk about, again, to have empathy for everyday people who think this way. When I was a little girl, the first thing I read about nuclear energy was in a book about how once you use a piece of land for nuclear power plant, you could never use it for anything else ever again. You get to generate power for 40 years, and then that land is like forbidden forever. And I remember that was so scary to me. There seems to be something uniquely contaminating about this form of power generation. I still remember, you know, of course now I realize it's completely wrong. You can use a nuclear power plant for above 40 years, 80 years, who knows, maybe longer, we don't know yet. And also you can return the land completely to nature, and we've done that. But this association is so deep in people. I would like to invite our panelists to tell us, how can we break that association and reintroduce nuclear as a friend of nature? And how can we do it not one at a time, but en masse?
Okay, so in terms of like the narrative and the response of human beings to that, it's really easy to tell them that something is scary, and they will be scared. You know, each of us, I think, was a child, so we remember the feeling when we were scared of something, when we were scared of the darkness, or we were scared of ghosts or anything. You know, we knew that there is nothing to be scared of, but it was really difficult for us to deeply believe that it's really nothing to be scared of. And I think the change in the narrative can be also be like shifted through investments around like the future nuclear power plants or like existing nuclear power plants that are actively helping the nature. Here, also in Barakah, that's quite recent trip, so we are talking about that a lot, but it was also a perfect place to see. So in Barakah, they have created artificial coral reef because they have open cooling system. So like the citizens were worried that the investment in nuclear power plant here will affect the coastal life. What did the power plant manager, let's say, I don't know who was that exactly, but what did they do is they gave something to the people, so the people not only won't be scared about like the change in the level of, let's say, diversity of the coastal life, but will also be happy about that. Because right now they have artificial coral reef. That's something amazing. That's something to be proud of. So I think that's also like something that we should advocate for, to think deeply about the local community and their needs, and try to fulfill them, not only fulfill them, but also like give something more. I think that that's quite important, and we can be proud of investments like that, like in here.
I would like to open up the floor to any questions that you might have for our panelists. I invite you all to, or even share if you have a personal experience about this or something that you'd like to say on this topic. I would really love to hear from you.
When it comes to nuclear waste, what do you think are the most nature-friendly solutions?
I wanted to add one thing in general to our discussion, because I think that may be interesting for you, especially that we are mostly advocates for nuclear here. So I wanted to like remind about the fact that actually some organisms in the nature, they are using radiation right now. Like there are microorganisms using radiation to like create this metabolic cycle. And without radiation, it wouldn't be possible. And also, like, we have fungi, which can, like, produce melanin. And because of that, it's absolutely resistant for radiation. So it's really interesting, and actually it's the whole rabbit hole which in you can try to jump, but it's something that we forget about in many cases, and I think it's quite important, especially in this public communication.
We're almost about to round up. I will ask our panelists for any final thoughts.
In the real world, we should start also, maybe not start, but we should work with the kids to
Yes.
show them, not like give them the knowledge or the facts like that. Show them how to get these facts. Show them to be curious. Show them to ask questions. I think it's really important in general, but especially in terms of science, we need to show them that science is great and they should be curious. They should ask questions and they should have
That
them.
is a great final note to end on. It is too late for the old people. Let's go after the kids.
Absolutely not. But
No, absolutely. I think the real message is everything starts with a vision. Everything starts with reconciling the reality we know with a narrative that we can connect with the world. So the panel's ended. Please reach out to our panelists. We're still around to chat. And I challenge all of you to go out there and spread this message. Thank you very much.